Week 1 is upon us, and we have the game of the week, the Florida Gators versus the Miami Hurricanes in Gainesville. So to talk about it from a recruiting perspective and an overall college football perspective, I've got my man Izubee Charles from Kane Sport. He's a recruiting analyst that covers the Miami Hurricanes in a way that is so crazy. When you go to look at his stuff, you'll see that this is the man that you want to talk to when you're talking to Hurricanes. Izubee, what's going on, bro?
Appreciate you having me on, man. I'm excited for this big game. Excited to chop it up, talk some recruiting.
No, absolutely. So, Azuki, we know the game is in Gainesville, but there are a few players that Miami and Florida are still going after that may be committed to either school. Who are some players that you're expecting to be at the game that Miami is still recruiting?
For me, the headliner has to be five-star cornerback DJ Pickett. Obviously, we know he's committed to LSU, but both of those programs, Miami and Florida, are both heavily recruiting him. He's had this game scheduled on his timeline for a long time since the summer. His dad told us, hey, regardless of where he commits, he will be in the swamp on August 31st. And this gives both of those programs a great shot to kind of say, hey, I know you're committed to LSU, but give us a look. We'll ball out. We'll show you what we can do. We can go on from there. Another guy that I have my eyes on is four-star wide receiver Joshua Moore. He's committed to Florida, but Miami's still pushing for him. Jumping the 2026 class, we got a local South Florida guy, Calvin Russell, who'll be in attendance. Also, Cannon Pickett, a four-star guard out of Tampa area. He's a Miami legacy. His older brother plays at Miami right now. And another 2026 guy I want to talk about is four-star wide receiver Jaden Petit. He's a big-time wide receiver out of Southwest Florida. Kevin Beard loves him. And Miami's going hard after him. So are the Gators. So a ton of guys are going to be in attendance in that game. I'm excited to see what happens.
How do you think that the Hurricanes are doing right now on a recruiting trail? Some people think they're doing a great job, and some people feel like they should be a little higher in the rankings. How do you feel about how they're doing with the committed prospects they already have?
I think Coach Cristobal and that staff is doing really, really well. They have a thing where they always say, hey, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And, they kind of show that every year towards the end of the cycle, you see Miami kind of making those big moves, landing those big guys. And I think that's going to be similar in the 2025 class. Right now, they're sitting around, I think, the number 10 or 11 spot on the On3 industry class rankings with a few big-time guys in that class headlined by guys like Drake Stubbs, S.J. Alfai-Tui, Gerard Pringle, some other guys, Luke Nickel, the guy out of Georgia that they really, really love, the gunslinger out of Milton. So I think right now Miami has a really, really solid base. I think in the coming months they'll add those final touches to that class and potentially push for another top 10 class. And I think they might be able to get a top 5 class under Mario Cristobal.
In your opinion, what does a top 5 class for Miami look like?
I think you have to add that big time guy. You have to land a DJ Pickett. You have to land an Elijah Griffin, or you have to go flip, a big time prospect from another class. I think right now, like I said, they're floating around that number 10, 11 spot. I think you add one or two more big time prospects to really round out that class. Because right now you have some studs. You have cornerback Jabari Antoine out of Louisiana. You have Drake Stubbs, like I mentioned. You have local guys like Chris Ewald in that class, who's some big-time four-star prospects. I think you need to land that one big fish, and then that class kind of rounds out, and you'll be happy with that unit you bring in.
You mentioned Elijah Griffin. Talk to me about his recruitment and how Miami is staying in it when everybody was thinking he was just an automatic go to Georgia. Now it's starting to be a lot of buzz about Miami. Talk to me about his recruitment.
Yeah, Miami's quietly been in it for a very, very long time. I've always thought Miami had the best chances of landing Elijah Griffin, the best chances of pulling him out of Georgia and keeping him away from the Bulldogs. He first visited Miami in the spring with his family. He absolutely loved it. I had a chance to speak with him and a couple of his family members. I believe it was his grandfather who absolutely enjoyed their trip. Coach Jason Taylor's playing a huge, huge role in that recruitment. Obviously, he's an NFL Hall of Famer. He's playing the same position as Elijah Griffin. And he's kind of told him, hey, come to Miami. We can develop you. We can, get you to that next level you want to be. And one guy that in particular that Elijah Griffin really, really likes is Ruben Bain. He said, hey, seeing him come in as a freshman and do his thing, I think I could potentially be that next guy in line that comes in Miami as a true freshman on that defensive line and makes impact. So I think Miami has a great, great chance of kind of making things interesting down the road. Right now, I do think the Bulldogs are still in that lead in that recruitment. But is there anyone that's going to be competition to them, I think it's the Hurricanes.
Speaking of a guy like Ruben Bain, who made a huge impact as a true freshman, is there anyone on Miami's team right now that you expect to make an impact as a true freshman?
So I got two guys for you. I got one on each side of the ball. So they're coming out of St. Thomas Aquinas, local powerhouse, and Jordan Lau, running back, former four-star guy, and OJ Frederico, cornerback. Funny enough, These are two guys that Mario Cristobal had to flip and keep in South Florida. Jordan Lyle was committed to Ohio State, and OJ was committed to West Virginia. Now they're on campus. They're making a big impact. We know Miami's running back room is deep, but Jordan Lyle is making some noise in that group. I think he'll get a lot of burn this season. And OJ Frederick, they said since day one he stepped foot on campus, he's been a guy that hasn't backed down from anyone, going up against number one, number two wide receivers and holding his own. So those are two guys from local programs that are making an impact down in Coral Gables. And that's what you needed a program like Miami. Keep those local guys homes, have them make an early impact and make a name for themselves down the road as well.
Miami had one of the best hauls in the transfer portal last year. Who are you most forward to looking to see play outside of quarterback Cam Ward, who we're all looking forward to see? But who are you looking forward to see that came over out of the transfer portal?
So I'm super, super excited to see Damen Martinez. We've seen his body of work at Oregon State the last few years, and him coming to Miami, pairing him up with a guy like Mark Fletcher in that backfield, along with that offensive line with guys like Inez Cooper, Jalen Rivers, Francis Malinoa. I'm really excited what he can do in the ACC. We kind of saw a preview of what the Miami running game could look like last year with a few running backs, going over 400, 500 yards and a few touchdowns. Now they have their feature back, pairing that up with Mark Fletcher and a speedster like Chris Johnson Jr. I think he's going to have a huge, huge year down in Coral Gables for the Canes.
All right, fall camp is over. Now we're preparing for week 1. Who stood out during fall camp that the average Miami fan may not be like super familiar with that you can say they can expect to see this year?
So this is a guy that I've been kind of watching for the last 2 years. He's been a little bit banged up, and that's defensive lineman AEM Mesidor. He's been a guy that hasn't played much the last 2 years due to foot injuries, but he's now back fully healthy. And I think he's going to have a huge, huge impact on that defensive line. We know guys like Ruben Bain have been, getting all the attention and for good reasons. But I think AEM Mesidor is going to be a guy that's in that rotation, making big plays for the Hurricanes in the run game and in the pass rush for a long time.
Speaking of guys on the defensive line that a lot of people don't know about, another guy is a guy by the name of Josh Horton. Talk to me about Josh Horton because I've been hearing a lot of good things about him down in Coral Gables. Let me say that over. Mm-hmm. Another guy that's on that defensive line that a lot of people may not be familiar with is Joshua Horton out of Langston Hughes in Atlanta. Can you tell me about his development? Because I've been hearing a lot of things out of Coral Gables that have been positive for Josh Horton.
Yeah, Josh is a guy entering a sophomore year that a lot of people are excited about. That defensive line rotation and the interior, they added some pieces. But I do think Josh can be a guy that can make a name for himself this season. He's absolutely massive. He has something you can't teach with his size. And I think once he puts it all together, he's going to be a problem in the trenches for the Hurricanes. He was a guy in the 2024 class that they were super, super excited about, flipped him from North Carolina. And I think this is the year that he can make a name for himself in that group of defensive line for the Hurricanes.
All right, Izubee. It's money time now. I got to figure out, if I go to Vegas, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to listen to you. All right. How do you see this game playing out against the Florida Gators, and give me a score prediction?
So I'm going 38-21 Miami. I think this is a game that'll play out similar to last year's game against Texas A&M. I think the Gators come out swinging in the swamp, their first game of the year, trying to make a statement. But I do think Miami pulls away in that second half. I think Cam Ward and Damen Martinez have a coming out party for the Hurricanes. And I think in the trenches, Miami really, really, does their thing on both sides of the ball. And in the end, I think 38-21 is the final score in the swamp on August 31st.
Izubee, my man, great stuff. Where can everybody find you on social media, and where can everybody find Kane Sport on social media?
So X, I'm Izubee Charles, Izubee Charles, and on social media, Instagram, Kane Sport, Twitter, Kane Sport, our website, Kane Sport, all the Hurricanes news, team news, recruiting news, everything in between. That's where you can get your best Hurricanes info.
All right, man. Hey, thanks so much for coming on. We'll do it again soon.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.